Okay, and I'd like to introduce the Substance Abuse Task Force team. They're going to be presenting today for us, and this is going to be Liz, Emily, Abby, Bree, and Hannah. And they're going to be presenting on substance use today and kind of the emerging drug trends and potential impact on youth and families. So I just want to take a minute to thank all of you for joining and taking the time to present all this wonderful information with us. And I will let you get started.
Thank you. My name is Liz, and I am the coordinator of the Barry County Substance Abuse Task Force. And the team that I work with will be presenting to you tonight. And we don't represent the entire Substance Abuse Task Force. We are the paid staff of the Substance Abuse Task Force. So we've put together a presentation for you that we hope gives you new information. And if you have any questions, please let us know, because we would very much like to be able to answer those or find answers if we can't answer it tonight. So I will let everybody introduce themselves. We're all going to take turns speaking. We've put some time and thought into this presentation tonight, and I do think we've intended to make it interactive. So we'll have to make sure that we don't have any issues when we unmute, where we talk over each other. We have some issues, but we'll figure that out. And we are big believers in practicing technological grace. So if something does happen, we'll figure it out. So thanks for coming and being with us tonight. And I think what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and do my little part and introduce myself. And then as everybody presents tonight, they'll introduce themselves briefly, if that's okay. So we are here tonight to talk a little bit about looking at 2020 and the substance use issues that we face today. 2020 vision, 2020, play on words, kind of seeing this year has been one for the books. And we probably all agree we can't wait for it to be 2021, and we hope bigger and brighter and better things are on that horizon for us. So, but we are going to take a look and just kind of talk about what's all about there. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide, Bree. You were okay. This is basically just our a little bit about the Substance Abuse Task Force. If you don't already know, we've been around since 2004, and we're a community collaborative coalition, meaning that we all work together. At any one time, there's 35 to 40 members of the Substance Abuse Task Force. Not everybody comes to meetings, but everybody's involved in some way, and we all work together on substance use issues. It's easier than finger pointing, and it does mean that we all kind of know what's happening, and we're a task force. So when we identify a problem through data or other issues, we can work together to kind of solve those issues. So we tend to focus on alcohol, marijuana or cannabis, nicotine, which we used to say was tobacco use, but now because of vaping, we talk about nicotine, and opioids and meth. Okay, next slide, please. We really hope that we do make a difference in the community, even if it's just making people aware of issues. And we do collect data. We help others collect data. And so everything we do is based on numbers. And I know it's not necessarily popular to say these days, but we really do believe in data science and math, and in terms of what our numbers are and what it says to us about what we need to address. So let's take a look at the next slide. I think this is where I stop talking. And I just want to say one thing before I turn it over to my colleagues, is that thank you for deciding to spend this first Monday of November with us, where it is incredibly dark at 6 o'clock. And all we really want to do is curl up with a heated blanket and a heating pad and, a good book. But thank you for deciding to spend time with us.
I was muted and just started talking. So I'm Emily Godfrey. I am also a member of the Substance Abuse Task Force. Even though we are living in some really challenging times right now, there are a lot of things coming at us every day. We are going to try and focus on the positive today. And so we want to know from you guys, what has been an unexpected silver lining from COVID and from staying home. Anybody?
More time with family, of course, in small doses and in small numbers.
Absolutely. Oh, I see that Tina said more time with grandchildren. That sounds lovely. Definitely. Oh, and Leanne said slowing down, not being so busy every single day. For sure, yeah. Karen said wearing comfy clothes to work for everybody who happens to be working from home. Definitely.
Can we participate too,
Yeah.
Well, my coworkers know this, but on the day that everything kind of shut down, my husband and I adopted a shelter dog. And so for us, it's just been awesome to get to spend a lot of time with our pet every single day, all day. And it started out with a lot of walks at first, but we've kind of gotten into more of a schedule now.
Definitely. And I have enjoyed, I'm going to call myself a newlywed for like the next 5 years. I've been married for a year, and I have really enjoyed being able to spend way more time with my husband than I ever could have dreamed of. It's been a really nice kind of unique experience. And I see, I hope I get your name right, Rochelle said that she agrees with Karen, being able to wear comfy clothes. That's definitely a perk, for sure. And then we wanted to ask if you are a caregiver or guardian or parent or even an aunt or grandmother, what is your favorite quality or the best quality of children in your life? So like the best quality of their personality, what makes them special to you? Oh, congrats, Tina. So fun. Karen said imagination, for sure. That's a great.
I am a new aunt. She's just over 3 months. And I think my favorite quality about her is she's obsessed with her tongue. And so it's always sticking out of her mouth. She's always, She also does this a lot because she now just found her hands. So I tell everyone that she has therapy hands.
How funny. Leanne said that one of her children is very hilarious and the other is just the sweetest, kindest boy ever. That's so lovely. Aw.
I will go ahead and input. My coworkers know, but I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, so we've been very busy. But my 5-year-old, my favorite thing about her is that she is very in tune with everybody else's emotions, and she just knows, you know, sometimes when somebody really needs extra support and a hug, and it's so sweet and so nice. And my boy, my 3-year-old, he is always good for a laugh. Anytime anybody needs it, Daniel is there. He is ready to do something very silly.
Tina said that her children are all grown, but she has a grandchild living with her, and she loves his little personality. He is going to be 2 in December, and he loves to snuggle Nana. I just think it's so much fun watching kiddos kind of blossom and finding out what personality they're going to end up with. And Liz says that her son can fix anything. Her daughter is very thoughtful. And I will say that my little brother is very sensitive and in tune with his emotions, and I really appreciate that about him. Anyone else want to share?
I can share a little bit. I don't have any children of my own, but I do. I'm an aunt to a 4-year-old and a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old. And I think that just their excitement about learning new things. Both of them are in preschool programs this year, or a couple of them are in preschool programs this year. And they're just so excited to learn new things. And, sometimes I don't know if we always see that, especially in our job when we're working with like middle school and high schoolers. Sometimes they're not as excited about school and our presentations, but the littles are really, really excited to learn and to, kind of repeat to you some of the things that they've learned. And it's just, I don't know, it makes your heart happy when they're excited to teach you something.
Very sweet. Thank you guys for sharing. I know we were like digging deep right from the beginning. And then we really want to make sure that this presentation works for you and that you get something really useful out of it. So we're just wondering, what are you hoping to learn tonight? Do you have expectations of what you want us to talk about? And that way we can make sure that we hit on those topics for you. And we love questions, so if you have questions, just throw them in the chat box or unmute yourself.
Well, the thing that I'm looking forward to learning in this training is the current trends as it relates to drugs within our county here in Berry.
Absolutely. We'll definitely make sure that we talk about that. And if you have questions along the way, just let us know.
Will do. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yes, I'm the same with Rochelle. My interest lies with the drug trends and the meth issue that has been going on in our county for years. As Liz can attest, I used to sit on the meth prevention task force when they first started out, and it just seems like it's just gotten so much worse here in our county. So that caught my eye when I saw this come up. So I'm like, oh, I think I'll attend that.
Wonderful. Well, we're glad you're here. Anybody else before we move on? Oh, I see that Leanne said no expectations. Excited to learn more about the task force and the good works happening in our community. Very nice. All right, I think I will turn it over to whoever is next.
Yeah, all right. So I am also the one that is screen sharing. So if I get a little click happy, I'm very sorry. It might take me a second to get back to where I'm going. But I'm learning all of this stuff over Zoom for presentations. So my name is Bree Gladstone. I work for the Berry County Substance Abuse Task Force, and I've been working in the field of prevention for a couple years in Berry, and then prior to that, I worked in the field of prevention, but in Branch County, which is kind of near the bottom of the state. Similar to Berry County, it's very rural. Doesn't have major cities or anything like that. It's fairly small. I am going to start us off with talking a little bit about some of those emerging drug trends, and taking a look at some of the things that we're seeing. And so the first thing that I want to share with you is just some data. So as Liz said earlier, we spend a lot of time gathering information and looking at the data. And one of the tools that we use to look at data is the Michigan Profile for Healthy Youth, or also called the MiFi. So the MiFi survey is done every 2 years. And it captures data about substance use, mental health, self-harm, things like that. And it specifically captures 7th graders, 9th graders, and 11th graders. So I have a snapshot that you should see on the screen, and this just kind of looks at some of the specific substances that it's looking at, and this is through the year. As we know about vaping, vaping is fairly new, and so we don't have a ton of data on that just because it hasn't been collected for very long. But what we do have is data from 2016 and 2018. So we kind of have a starting point, and then we can kind of see what's been going on. So you can see the blue lines are the substance of alcohol. The orange line is marijuana. The gray line is vaping, and then the almost looks like a yellow color is cigarettes. And so you can kind of clearly see that most of our substances in general are staying pretty much the same. But then we see some pretty significant increases. So we see a 10% increase here with 7th graders. We see a pretty significant increase, especially with 9th graders. And then again, our biggest increase that we see is the use of vaping by 11th graders. And these are all just capturing, use within the last 30 days. And so we saw some pretty significant trends with vaping. And so that's the first kind of drug trend or emerging substance that we're going to talk about. Okay, so one of the biggest concerns with vaping is that it's kind of the new thing right now. No one has vaped for 50, 60 years. So we don't have a ton of data and science yet to know what the long-term health effects are going to be from someone using a vape. What we do know is that we're starting to see some things that are very, very concerning with vaping. So I'm gonna play a quick video here that actually my coworker Abby did for us. And it's gonna talk a little bit about some of the new devices, and then we'll talk a little bit to kind of summarize the video. So hopefully we can hear this. It's a YouTube video. And it stars Abby.
Hi, my name is Gabrielle. I work with the Berry County Substance Abuse Task Force. We just wanted to make a quick little video, kind of update you guys on vaping and vaping situation in Berry County. So we all know that a little while ago a flavor ban was passed on.
Bree, I think because you muted yourself, we can't hear it anymore.
Oh, well, that isn't how it's supposed to work.
So if you share computer audio, or if you just leave yourself unmuted.
Perfect. I will just leave it unmuted. Sorry about that, guys. See, we're just learning all these new things.
Vaping and vaping situation in Berry County. So we all know that a little while ago a flavor ban was passed on vaping products. That did not affect the whole market. There are still disposable vape products on the market that are fruit flavored. Here's a couple examples for you. This one is a puff bar, very small. This one is fruit flavored. It's good for 500 uses, and it was a little less than $10. It's practically weightless, super small, easy to conceal. In the same size and the same style category is this Hype bar. These ones are peach, ice, and orange soda flavored. So we're still not losing that fruit flavor. They're the exact same size. They're still practically weightless, and they are also good for about 500 uses. A little bit different style is this Viva. This one looks like a tube of lipstick. It's just a tiny bit heavier. It's good for the same amount of uses. And this one is mango strawberry flavored. Next up is a little bit different. It's the same style as the Viva, but it's bigger. And that's because it is good for more uses. Good for 3 times as many uses, up at 1,500. This one is pink lemonade flavored. So you guys can notice a pattern that really these fruit flavors, they haven't gone anywhere. Companies have kind of found a loophole. And we wanted to remind you or inform you if you didn't know that when you vape, you're not inhaling water, you're not inhaling a vapor. What you're inhaling is a aerosol loaded with chemicals, and it's kind of like inhaling hairspray. It's sticky and it coats the inside of your lungs, and that doesn't really go away very easily. before COVID, we heard a lot about lung injuries from vaping. And that's caused by that sticky chemical going into your lungs and really doing a lot of damage in there. The last kind that we wanted to show you is one that is not disposable, but refillable. So this comes together, this mouthpiece and this, the vape itself, and the mouthpiece gets filled with vape juice. So the one we have here is a CBD one. We all have heard about CBD, we all kind of know what it is. This one is also fruit flavored, it's flavored honeydew melon, and this one boasts about blowing insane clouds. We've kind of heard through the grapevine that young people, even children, they're competing to blow big vape big vape clouds. It's kind of a thing. It's what they're enjoying to do, and this is playing right into that. And again, we just wanted to remind you that there's been a lot of changes in legislation recently in the last couple of years regarding tobacco use, but right now it is absolutely illegal to use and possess tobacco or vaping products by anyone under the age of 21. These do contain nicotine. These are addictive. And if you need any resources, feel free to reach out to the Berry County Substance Abuse Task Force, and we can put you in contact with cessation programs, recovery resources for nicotine addiction, and even just some resources to help talk with your children about tobacco use, including vaping. Thank you so much.
Okay, so are we back to being able to see my screen? All good, perfect. So there's a lot of information in there about some of the new devices, but basically last year there was a temporary flavor ban that went into effect. And what we kind of saw happen during that time is that young people really shifted to the use of disposable vape devices. So things like that Abby just showed us in that video, they're very, very easy to conceal. You know, we have heard of cases where students are continuing to use them in school and things like that. And so just to give you, you know, some general information, in December of last year, the president did sign Tobacco 21 into law. And so it says that you have to be 21 to purchase, possess any type of vaping device or electronic cigarette. But what we see is that we know that these devices are ending up in the hands of young people, and that it's this techie new thing that students are using. And so this continues to be an issue for our local schools and for young people in general. Like I said, we don't have all of the science yet to support what's going to happen if someone uses a vaping device for 50, 60 years. But what we are seeing is we are seeing very, very young people having irreversible lung damage due to the use of vaping devices. And so that's obviously very, very concerning. And so that's kind of one of the drug trends that we wanted to mention. Does anyone have any questions, or we can move on to the next substance that kind of goes right along with this. So cannabis. So just throwing this out there, what have you heard? You know, what are your thoughts? What have you heard about cannabis, marijuana, products, things like that? Here. Anybody?
Nobody has heard anything?
I can't see the chat box either since my screen's up. So if you guys see something come through, let me know.
Karen said recreationally legal, and I will say that I live in Grand Rapids, and I've been really sad to see all of these new billboards popping up in my favorite neighborhoods advertising recreational marijuana. And Bree, Tina says way too many people have to do this to function daily.
Okay. Yeah.
And Dawn says, I don't really know anything about it.
Okay, perfect. So we're gonna just kind of give a general overview about some of the concerns with cannabis, but I can speak very honestly in that marijuana in Michigan is kind of a mess. And, you know, we as, you know, working in the field of prevention, there's new products all of the time, there's new information all of the time, and so we are learning every day a little bit about it, and so I will share with you a little bit of what we do know. There's a lot of different changing perceptions, especially about cannabis use in Michigan and around the United States. So what we've seen with some of our data is that students are reporting that they are like less concerned about that marijuana is dangerous and things like that. So we're really seeing, of course, access has increased. Like Emily said, we know that there are different dispensaries and marijuana businesses that have popped up around the state of Michigan. So in Michigan, we really have 3 different, I want to say they're public acts. So if I say that wrong, I do apologize, but I'm pretty sure that's what they were. But so we have an adult use industry, we have a medical industry. And so these kind of all have different laws with them. And that's where it gets really, really confusing because there's confusion about the laws. It's not written clearly. Like I said, it's kind of just a mess. So what we do know about the law is that adult use marijuana is for individuals over the age of 21. That is different from medical marijuana in that, so Michigan has been a medical marijuana state since, I believe, 2008 or 2009. And so that required individuals to you know, go into a certain medical cannabis business. They'd have to have a medical ID card that was issued by the state in order to purchase that product. So when everything happened and Michigan voters approved for adult use marijuana, that took all of that away. So now we kind of have these 2 separate but very, very similar types of cannabis that exist in Michigan. We know that these businesses have been marketing and targeting high-risk areas in terms of, although they're not allowed to be, you know, so many feet or whatever distance from schools, we know that billboards, signs, products are up, things like that. And there's just an overall general of mistrust of information. So I encourage everyone, and even when we go into the schools and do these presentations, I encourage everyone to do your own research, but make sure that that research that you're doing comes from a credible source. And so there's a lot of, unfortunately, not great information out there. So, you know, I encourage everyone to, you know, spend some time looking at information. Certainly the task force, we do a lot of printed resources and information, our social media posts. You know, we always, you know, cite sources and things like that, but it can be very, very confusing. And the other thing about that is that marijuana looks a lot different right now. So when we think of marijuana from like the 70s and 80s, we think of like this green, leafy, dry substance. And what we're seeing in Michigan and across the country is very, very different from that. So I'm going to go to my next slide here. I'm actually going to come back to that. So one of the first things is that in the state of Michigan, we do have edibles. And so edibles are things that contains certain levels of THC, and you eat it, you ingest it. So these are just some examples of some of the products. So as you can see in this upper right-hand corner, kind of mimicking some very popular brands of cereal with like Chronic Toast Crunch and Fruity Loops, Fruity Loopies, sorry. And then we see things like brownies, cookies, gummies. And what can be really, really dangerous, unfortunately, with the edibles is that the serving size of edibles is not like, is not a container of cookies or one brownie. The serving size is more like, a quarter of one of these gummies. And so what we've also seen occurring in the state of, around the state and around the country is that children have gotten their hands on some of these products and ingested them, and that can, cause some fairly severe medical related issues due to that. Do we have some chat things coming up? Sorry, it's like blinking on my screen, so I was checking it out.
We did. Karen mentioned that she was concerned about edibles and the access to them. A couple of years ago, the state of Michigan did pass some regulations that did not allow for, you kind of see how that classic brownie is advertised. It's not advertised in the same way as the Chronic Toast Crunch or the Captain Munch. So it has to not be recognizable as candy or something like it. However, the cookies, the candy, if it's found, it looks like candy to small children. Mm-hmm. Other thing that's happening is, unfortunately, some middle school and high school kids are beginning to take cannabis products to school, and if they share these edibles, that can cause some issues. So we are certainly concerned about this, and this is only one aspect of how marijuana or cannabis looks different today. So I don't know, Bree, did you have something else there?
Yeah, so along with some of these edible products, so like Liz was just saying, cannabis definitely looks different today. And this is where we're starting to see things like butane hash oil. So all of these products that you see on this page actually do contain THC, which is the psychoactive chemical that's found in marijuana products. And so what we see is this is kind of a chemical process that people are heating up the marijuana to certain temperatures, and through a chemical process. I'm not a chemist, so I don't know all of the specifics of how it's done, but I do know that it involves use of a butane torch, and they're heating the elements up to a certain point to where it's actually changing the structure of the substance. And what we're seeing is that these products contain extremely high levels of THC. So sometimes waxes, shatters, dab might be something that you've heard about. It does not look appetizing in any way, but this contains THC levels of upwards of sometimes 50, 60, 70% THC. And so that can definitely cause issues when someone is using, because that is just such a high level of THC. So when I spoke about a few slides ago on how, the marijuana that we think about in the 70s and 80s, in general, the green leafy substance typically was 3 to 5% THC. And what we're seeing now is products that are anywhere from, like I said, 50% THC to even more than that. So that's very, very concerning. And then I'm going to go back super quickly. Was there anything else in the chat button? Sorry, guys.
Yeah, so Leanne said she had no idea. So yeah, things have changed a lot. And then Family Support Centers asked if all of this can be found in Berry County at the local dispensary.
Well, we would have to out ourselves as having gone there, which we haven't yet, but they do a pretty good job of showing their catalog and their materials online. So yes, and if somebody can't get these items, these items are available locally and not very far away. Battle Creek, I know Bree probably wants to talk a little bit about that too. If you can't get it here, you can go to Battle Creek. So.
Yep, absolutely. And so if you're, to always one of the things that we do sometimes to learn about some of the products is just kind of glancing at like a lot of provisioning centers have Facebook pages, and they'll have like deals of the day and products of the day and things like that. We are always just so surprised at some of the different products that exist out there. Everything from chocolate candy bars that are infused with THC to pretty much anything you can think of. So yeah, absolutely. The marijuana in general has really changed. So when we're talking about, I think sometimes people are used to thinking of marijuana as the, green leafy substance, and that's not really what we're seeing as the popular substance of choice. When we hear about, especially young people, young adults using cannabis products, it's a lot of times some of these dabs, some of the, waxes, edibles for sure. And then a lot of marijuana products can also be used in a vaping device. And that's very, very easy to conceal. And we know that students, have done that at school and in other places that, it's not easy to detect. So I'm going to go back a couple of screens just because this is another thing that I think gets really, really confusing, is that there's also a CBD market. So CBD and THC are very, very different. And so I found this graphic. It was free to use. It just does a really good job of kind of explaining what the differences are. And so just to better understand, so there's hemp and there's marijuana. They look very, very similar. But what we know is that CBD products, hemp oil, cannabis oil, things like that, they're going to contain, in order to be packaged and in order to be labeled, I guess I will say, as a CBD product, they have to contain 0.3% or less of THC. So they can't have those high psychoactive compounds that we see in an actual marijuana plant or the oils or anything like that. And so hemp is used for agricultural products such as textiles, seeds, and oils. And there's no psychoactive properties when we talk about CBD and we talk about hemp and things like that. Then when we go over here on the right and look at marijuana, so marijuana is different. It does typically contain anywhere from, like I said, 5% to however much, depending on if it's been like genetically, I don't know what the right term is, mutated into having higher THC levels. I know that plants can contain a lot higher levels of THC than what we've seen before. And so marijuana will have THC, and that's really that chemical that's going to cause some of those psychoactive things to occur in the brain and things like that. The biggest thing that I want people to understand when it comes to CBD products is that CBD products are not regulated. So the FDA has no regulation over that. And so even if a product, on the shelf at Family Video or at a gas station in town, if it's packaged and labeled as CBD, a lot of products haven't had any type of testing to be 100% sure that what's on the label is actually what you are getting in that product. So we have heard, different instances where people are thinking that it's just a CBD product that they're using, and they'll actually, fail a drug screen or something like that for THC. So that's a concern, obviously, as well. But I think that's really everything that I have about marijuana and stuff like that. Does anyone have any questions or anything before I pass it on to my next colleague?
I don't see anything in the chat either, so.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Okay, so my name is Hannah Napolillo. I work with Berry County Substance Abuse Task Force as well. I'm just going to give a little forewarning that I keep getting that dreaded notification that my internet status is, or my internet connection is unstable. So if I become gargled, that is why, and we'll just hope for the best. The Berry County Substance Abuse Task Force is, we've had some we've had some nice things come through with grants. So we have currently a grant called the CARE grant. It's a federal grant, and it allows us to put some extra focus on opioids, because opioids we know are important to talk about, even though, all the things that Bree was sharing, marijuana, cannabis and vaping, those things are more prevalent. We still have to talk about opioids. So I get to spend a little bit of extra time in my workday thinking and talking and educating on opioids. So just so we're all aware and on the same page, I'm just wondering if anyone can share what they know about opioids, or even maybe some examples of names of opioids, if you want to put them in the chat, or unmute yourself. Either or works. Oxy, yep, absolutely. Oxycontin, oxycodone. Tina says after a rotator surgery, had a prescription for Oxy, yep. So I think that's probably one of the most common ways that people get introduced to opioids, is following some sort of surgery or operation. So these are when we talk about opioids in terms of medications and prescription medications, these are things that can be used appropriately and safely in medical situations when all the right safeguards are put in place. The reason why we are so concerned about opioids from, over the last few years, I know COVID has kind of taken over our minds in terms of pandemics, but prior to COVID, we were in an opioid epidemic with overdoses and high rates of use and high rates of addiction to opioids. So that's why we're concerned about opioids. They're highly addictive, and the overdose rate for opioids the risk for overdose is great. And we were experiencing a really high number and increasing numbers of Americans experiencing opioid overdoses. I should also say that opioids don't have to just include prescription drugs. So prescription drugs like Oxycontin, like we said, Vicodin, hydrocodone, morphine, codeine, those are all can be legally used in certain situations. But we also have illicit or illegal opioids, so that would include heroin, which is the one most of the time people most often hear about, but also fentanyl. So fentanyl can be a prescription medication, but it can also be illegally added to what we call street drugs, such as heroin, but we're also starting to see it added into different illegal drugs like cocaine or methamphetamine. So in terms of emerging trends with opioids, fentanyl is our number one, I think most of the time, our number one concern, because it often, when it ends up in illegal drug supplies, so when it ends up in our heroin supply or any other illicit drug supply, it can be really, really risky for people in terms of overdose. So fentanyl is about 50 to 100 times stronger or more potent than morphine is. So when we think about how strong, if you've ever had morphine, how strong that effect is, fentanyl can be up to 100 times stronger than that. So it takes a very small amount of fentanyl for someone to experience an overdose after using it. So when it ends up in a drug supply and somebody doesn't know that it's in there, that is why there's a lot of risk with that. So we're always watching fentanyl. We're hearing more and more about it. And then brorphine is another illicit drug. It's also an opioid, and it's very similar to fentanyl. It's relatively new. It's synthetic, so it's made in a lab. And it also we're starting to see it more added to illegal drug supplies. Concerning, again, because of that risk for overdose. And also concerning because it's new, we don't know as much about it. We're not, prior to learning more about this, people weren't screening for brorphine and like, drug screenings and things like that. So it's something new that is on the horizon. And when it comes to opioids in kids, I said earlier that opioids are really highly addictive. And the reason that we're concerned about kids having their hands on opioids is because of that developing brain and that greater increased risk of addiction. The most common ways that kids gain access to opioids are through legitimate means, through things like surgeries after an injury. One of the most common ways that it used to be was wisdom teeth extractions. Kids would often have their wisdom teeth removed and then get, 7 to even sometimes 30-day supply of Vicodin, which we're learning more that that's not really necessary, that a lot of people can go through wisdom tooth extraction with just ibuprofen and be okay. So that is happening less now, which I think is a really good pat on the back to the people working in policy change and opioid research and things like that, because we figured out that this was a really big opening for kids to be exposed to opioids and then potentially develop addictions, because we know that most children, like most teens who develop an addiction to opioids or into adulthood who develop addictions to opioids, the vast majority of them are exposed to opioids in some sort of medical setting. And then what about Barry County? So Barry County, we are fortunate enough to know, because of that MiFi data that Bree talked about earlier, where we get to ask 7th, 9th, and 11th graders questions about substance use history. We know that opioid use in Barry County among teens is pretty low, which is good. We know it's about less than 4% as of 2018. And when we compare that to like vaping, where in 2018 we were at about 30% of teenagers were reporting having used a vape. So compared to that, opioids are doing pretty good. That doesn't mean we get to ignore it and not talk about it, but that is a good sign. You can go to the next one, Bree. Thanks. So it's also important to talk about how can we stop opioid abuse or misuse, or how can we prevent that? What are tangible things that people can do? Because we know that, if someone does have to use a prescription opioid, there has to be safe ways to do that. So one of the things, the first one here is safe disposal. So sometimes people end up hanging on to medications in their medicine cabinets for years and years. Just, you stopped using it, never really thought about it again. Maybe it expires, you didn't, whatever it is. We know that research tells us that the more that people have excess medications in their medicine cabinets, risk of overdose goes up. Just because it's more accessible to people, whether that's guests, whether that's children in the home, whether it's pets, accidents happen where pets get their hands on things that or their paws on things that they shouldn't have. So safe disposal is important, and Barry County has a few different ways that you can do that. So Barry County has some different events that happen every year. So in September and May, we have household hazardous waste that happens at the fairgrounds, where people can just drive through the barn, hand off their medications, and we make sure that they get properly disposed of. We also do that through the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration. They have a national day 2 times a year, and we help to sponsor an event at Walgreens in Hastings to recognize that day. And then we also have permanent take-back locations in Barry County at all the different law enforcement offices and at our various pharmacies. So all of that information is on our website if you ever wanted or needed like immediate, you needed to get rid of some stuff in a event, household hazardous waste isn't coming up, you can always use those permanent take-back days. Talking to your doctor is always important in all things healthcare related and all things related to prescriptions and medications, but with opioids it's particularly important to talk about why are you taking this medication? Are there alternative meds or different therapies that could be done instead? Especially with kids, if a kid is going to be introduced to an opioid for whatever reason, talking about what are the risks of addiction with this medication, of overdose, what are the plans for how this patient is going to take it, Are they limited to so many days with no refills? Just being aware of what this is going to entail. What do you do if you start to become concerned of dependence or anything like that? Good to make a plan ahead of time. And then opioid knowledge is kind of what we're trying to do right now, is just being aware of why are there risks associated with opioids? What are they? What do they do? And things like that. And then always proper prescription use. We want to do that with all of our prescriptions. Go to the next one, Bree. And then alcohol. Alcohol is another substance that we are always going to talk about, I think, just because of its social acceptance. Is very well integrated into our society and our practices and our family gatherings. Sometimes alcohol is the most commonly used substance by Berry County youth and Berry County adults, which is pretty common across the country, just again due to that social acceptance. What we do know about alcohol use in Berry County is that as teens get older, the way that they perceive alcohol, the risk of using alcohol, that goes down. So they start to see alcohol as less risky. Using it, drinking it could potentially pose less harm to them. And when we see that go down, we see use go up, which makes sense. If I feel like something isn't going to harm me, if I'm not going to get in trouble, I might be more likely to use it. Overall, the good news is that our data shows that Berry County youth are using alcohol less. Over the last 10 years or so, use is going down, which is good. As of 2018, 40% of Berry County high school students said that they had ever had a drink in their lifetime. And I think the next slide, Bree, has some more data, yeah. So this is still more MyFi data, looking at our 7th, 9th, 11th graders. And it's showing us 2010 to 2018. So overall, if you look from the blue to the gray for each grade overall, and even for the county overall, we see that decline, which is good. It's good to see that overall use go down. And also you see in 11th grade that use, the percentage of students reporting that they're using alcohol is the highest, which again makes sense because most likely their perception of harm has gone down. They might have more access to alcohol now, whether it's through parents, because sometimes in households rules change as kids get older, or if it's having access to older friends who have access to alcohol, or parents or friends of parents or parents of friends. Most likely access might be going up in 11th grade compared to 7th grade. Go to the next one. Okay. So obviously we're in this situation of COVID-19, and COVID has changed everything probably in some way for everyone. And it is no different for substance use. COVID-19 has impacted substance use. So this slide and the next one has some data from Nielsen, which does some national evaluating of trends and markets and sales and things like that. So what we see here, and I think, I personally have heard this, I don't know if anyone else has felt or heard this, that alcohol sales are going up. So this is showing that this data is from early on in the pandemic, so more like April. But rates of sales for beer, cider, and malt beverages, wine, and spirits have gone up, but highest for spirits. I'm gonna go to the next one, Bree, thanks. And this one is just showing from that same data that consumers are gravitating towards larger pack sizes. So they're more likely to be getting larger packs of beer. So this graph in the bottom left showing that 6-packs, the rates of sales have actually gone down, whereas for 20 and 30 packs of beer have gone up. So, which kind of makes sense when we think about some of the shopping trends that we were all engaging in April and March and May. We were doing bigger trips to try and maybe last for longer amounts of time. But so larger pack sizes going up. And it was even seen in the on-premise on the right-hand side, when on-premise, like restaurants and bars who were doing takeout and delivery for people to try and, you know, generate more business and things like that, consumers were more interested in not single serving sizes of alcohol, but multi-serving sizes of alcohol. So we can see that, you know, I mean, I feel like I can personally say that I have seen this in my own shopping behaviors, but we can also see it nationally that people are gravitating towards, you know, maybe alcohol can be seen as a relief or a way to unwind after a long day of Zoom calls all day because you're working from home and you're trying to, you know, deal with the kids or the dog or whatever. Alcohol sales are going up. This graph is about overdoses. So this data is from Western Michigan University and their medical examiner office. They offer, or they provide medical examiner services for 12 counties in Michigan, including Barry. We are seeing increases and kind of drastic increases in the rates of fatal overdoses, unfortunately. So this is just data specifically from April to June of 2019, comparing it to April to June of 2020. So 56 deaths in 2019 for all 12 counties and 103 deaths in 2020 during that same time period, showing an increase of 84%. Barry County's numbers are pretty small. You can see them on that graph on the side. We had 3 deaths in 2019 and 5 in 2020. So those are kind of small numbers to try and compare. But we know that this is pretty consistent across the state. The state of Michigan has seen an increase in overdoses by about 33%, reported by EMS. And the country is seeing this too. And prior to COVID, we were actually starting to see a decline in overdose rates. So now we're seeing a kind of a reversal, and, you know, researchers are speculating that this is due to all the stressors and anxiety that people face during a pandemic, and the use of substances to try and cope with those stressors and anxiety. I'm gonna go to the next one, Bree. And we know when we talk about substance use, we should also talk about mental health and vice versa. So obviously we're all going through a lot of things right now and dealing with different things. And the CDC reported that during June, as of June, 40% of adults reported struggling with some sort of mental health or substance use issue, whether that's anxiety, depression, trauma, stress, substance use, and suicide specifically here. So we know that as people are dealing with things, and the stressors of a pandemic, they might also be using substances to kind of cope with that. And I think the next slide, Bree. Yes. So we also know that as, you know, thinking about people who have a substance use disorder, struggling with substance use, maybe entering recovery or going into treatment, we know that social connections are incredibly important for folks in those situations. And obviously COVID did not lend itself to having great social connections in the way that we're used to them. So that could be a major barrier for folks who have a substance use disorder, trying to seek treatment or anything like that. People might also experience barriers to treatment because of, you know, things going remote. I think that the state of Michigan and Barry County and surrounding counties have done a really good job of adapting to that and providing telehealth services to the folks that need it and are able to use it, but just added challenges in these situations. So we know that it's really important, you know, if someone were to know someone struggling in those types of situations, it would be important to reach out and keep in contact and keep in consistent contact with people and encourage the use of effective coping strategies, and maybe even helping encourage people to connect to resources, including virtual resources that are available. And I think Liz at the end of our presentation is going to talk more about resources specific to Barry County and things like that. So it's just as a reminder, because I think we all need the reminder every day to take care of yourselves and, practice self-care in the way that you know how. And Abby's going to talk a little bit more about that too, and take care of each other if you're able to. And I think that is my last slide.
And Tina has to leave, and she's asking if she can get a recording of this, Jen. So if you could help her with that, we sure would appreciate that.
All right, so while they're figuring that out, I'll introduce myself. My name is Abby Lowe. I have been with the Substance Abuse Task Force. I started about 6 weeks before COVID, so really getting a lot of trial by error during COVID, just like everybody else. Prior to that, I worked in child welfare, and I was born and raised in Hastings, so my perspective, on things is a little bit different. I was involved in Liz's programs way back when I was in high school. But so what we want to do at this point in the presentation is kind of switch it up a little bit. We're going to turn it into a bit of a roundtable discussion and talk about what parenting and caregiving to children and even to ourselves and to our partners and our families in general has been like in 2020. We talked a little bit earlier about in the icebreaker about silver linings, but first, what kind of challenges has your family faced this year? And you can put it in the chat, or I'll write it in the chat so that everybody can kind of see it as we go. But what kind of things have really popped out to you this year? Yeah, so Liz said in the chat, not knowing what's next. It seems like every day we're just we're just waiting. We're waiting for another shoe to drop, or we're waiting for news about what's going on. Karen said, so many of us feel very isolated and removed from our personal relationships, and Zoom can only do so much. Yeah, there's family that I haven't seen, and I've met babies on Zoom from my family that we haven't met yet this year, because it's just, we haven't felt comfortable. Does anybody else have anything they want to share? Emily said, sacrificing in-person time, tradition, and special events. Yeah, especially with the season that we're having coming up right now, we're all trying to figure out how we're gonna see our families and our friends with the holidays coming up in a safe manner. Rochelle said, finding a way to take a break from the news. I feel that so deep in my soul, Rochelle. The news, it doesn't seem to be bringing us anything light right now. And there's staying informed, and then there's also just creating a stressor for yourself. That's really just making things worse. Bree, you can hit the next slide. Karen also said, watching others suffering, and we can't really reach out and comfort them. Yeah, I think that's really big, especially those of us, who are parents, or even those who just are very comforting presences, and we're used to being supportive, and our friends reach out to us, and not being able to do that leaves us feeling a little bit less. So now that we've covered all of the negative things, let's talk about, let's kind of switch it up, and let's think about the positive things that 2020 has brought us. What kind of creative ways has your family overcome those challenges that we just talked about? Everybody got creative this year, and everybody switched up their traditions a little bit. And what have you done differently that has been good for you guys? I know for me, my daughter, she started school this year. She's in kindergarten, so she's 5. And I got to teach her to read. And that was something that I never expected that I would be able to do. But we're virtual schooling, so I got to witness her read her first word. And I think that that was kind of a hidden blessing for us. I didn't realize how important that would be to me until it happened. Elizabeth said she got to do a lot of camping this summer, which is really great. And Karen also said we got to use the outdoors to create ways to spend time together. Yeah, we did that a lot too. There was a lot of meeting outside of my parents' very big backyard, just so that we could see each other. Emily said, finding new ways to safely spend time with loved ones. She just had the silliest friend date eating cheesecake in her cars next to each other with the windows down. Family Support Center said they're practicing cooking and baking together. Group FaceTimes. Yeah, so we're still making memories, and we're still making happy memories. And amidst all of the things that are going on, and amidst how stressed we are with what's going on in the world and what we're reading in the news and how we're feeling at work, or we're still making those happy memories, and we're still going to be able to look back on 2020 and think about how happy we were. We still had times of just immense joy. And 2020 couldn't take that from us, no matter how hard this year really was. Dawn said that the campgrounds were closed, so we went camping in my grandma's yard. Yeah, we did that too. We did that at my in-laws' house, and it was a great time. Leanne said instead of trick-or-treating, we made stations on our own trails with lanterns, tiki torches, and lights. Yeah, me and my kids this year, I know I keep talking about my kids because that's all I have, but yeah, we combined Halloween and Easter this year. We didn't get to do an Easter egg hunt, so we filled little pumpkins with candy, and they went out and they did that, and they loved it, and it was just something new and fun for them, and we still got to make a happy memory even though we were missing out on what we thought was a traditional Halloween. And I think in that sense, we kind of started something new. We all decided that we liked this better. We didn't have to be as cold, and we didn't have to do as much walking. And so I know I've just kind of been rambling about this and how great it's been, but what has your family done this year that was super positive? I talked about, you're still making those happy memories, but what was one thing that just really stands out to you as being so positive despite everything that was going on? I bought a house this year. That was my very positive event. So Emily said she is having a lot of quality time when she's setting goals for her family. I think that's really good. I think that 2020 has given us a lot of time. Given us a lot of time at home. It's given us a lot of time to think. It's given us a lot of time with the people that we love, and using that to think about your future and plan your future is something that can be very healing in a way to really cope with what's going on right now and kind of get past that.
Yeah, and I was gonna type in the chat box, but then I realized I couldn't. But I was gonna say, I think that we've gotten to practice like patience and giving people some grace of that this sucks and it's hard for absolutely everyone, but we're together, separated, and I think that that's just been something that's made me feel better, whether like it's been a Zoom call with our friends that live like in other states, who are also in quarantine and aren't able to like do things as family. We're kind of all experiencing the same things, and we're patient with each other, and we know that this is not normal, and we're learning on how we cope with that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point too. Using this time to, it's one thing to kind of be like, this is so hard, and we've been doing this for so long. I mean, we've been home for 7.5 months now. But when you think that, everybody is doing this. We're not alone right now in this, that we're doing this together. We're doing it collectively to be safe. I'm just going to hit the chat box here. Karen has made the final decision to retire. I'm so sorry. She's made the decision to retire this year. Congratulations. I'm sure it was either a very difficult or very easy decision, depending on where you are. But either way, it was a very big one. Rochelle said her fiance and her have been able to slow down from their busy work schedules and have dinner together, their children at the table. That's so big, and Emily's really going to hit on protective factors like that, spending that quality time with your family, and studies have shown that even just the simple act of having a meal, a sit-down meal with your family and your children can mean so much and can really influence your family and how everybody is doing mentally and emotionally. So that's really, really important. That's a really big step. Family Support Center has said that they've been able to save money, hopefully for a fun and warm vacation once it's safe to do so. Yeah, definitely. Lots of vacations got canceled this year, so I hope you get to go on yours. But yeah, so if you want to hit the next slide, Bree. So we're going to start to transition and talk about self-care. And Hannah hit on this a little bit earlier and how important it is for our mental health and even for our physical and emotional well-being. Self-care can really make the difference in a lot of things. So a lot of us, are working from home, or we are full-time parents or caregivers. We're full-time partners. We are, some of us are also teachers. So all of that means that we're not really spending a lot of time focusing on what we need. If we're meeting the needs of our families and our children and our jobs and our kids' education needs, but is there enough time for us to listen to what we ourselves need? Are we listening to our bodies and to our minds when it's saying, maybe you need to slow down a little bit? So what are you guys doing to practice self-care as a caregiver or a parent? What are you doing that's just solely for you?
I'll say walking.
Yeah, getting some exercise. Rochelle started doing some yoga. I miss doing yoga. Liz is also doing a lot of walking. She's got a lot of beautiful property. And Emily's decorating her house heavily, from what I understand. I'm just going to skip one. What are some activities that you're doing to strengthen your family bond this year? What are you guys doing together? We talked about how Rochelle is having meals as a family.
I think it's been really fun to do like little simple busy crafts when I am with my niece and nephew, whether it's something like painting or we painted pumpkins. We do a lot of sticker books, things like that are just like busy, but we get to do it together and they enjoy it.
Yeah, me and my daughter have begun reading Harry Potter, and it's her favorite thing, which makes me so, so happy. We also do crafts. You've either seen our videos on somebody's Facebook on here. We do a lot of crafts that we can eat. That's what we do. Hannah's also doing a lot of cooking together. But yeah, so that's kind of my piece. I'm going to hand it off to Emily, who's going to talk a little bit more about those protective factors in our family.
Thank you. So I'm going to talk about protective and risk factors. So when we are talking about protective factors, we are talking about things that can help our children thrive and succeed. So I like to think of protective factors as bubble wrap. Like each protective factor that you put in place for your family or your child is kind of another layer of bubble wrap. And specifically, we're talking about how they can help reduce the risk of drug use in children. So things like creating opportunities to bond with your child, asking them to help you cook dinner, asking them to help pick out a recipe, giving them a new chore to do, teaching them things is always a really great way to kind of bond. There are a couple of different individual characteristics in children that we know are protective factors. So intelligence, being comfortable in social situations, and being resilient. So that ability to face challenges and just keep going. And those are all characteristics that families can build upon. So if your child's a little shy, that's totally fine, but you can work with them to help them feel more comfortable in social situations. And also giving your child what we call healthy beliefs and clear standards is another really great way to kind of protect them. So thinking about when I was growing up, a healthy belief and clear standard that I was taught was you brush your teeth in the morning and you brush your teeth before bed. Or you always wash your hands before you have your meal. So things like that, where you make it really clear what your expectations are ways to kind of add structure and help your child make those better choices. And there are a lot of different ways to do that. Thank you, Bree. So risk factors are those things that make your child more vulnerable to perhaps making choices that you wouldn't want them to. So things like having peers that use alcohol or drugs is a risk factor. Not having a lot of supervision, so again, not having that structure can be a risk factor. I'm so sorry, my husband is watching TV. If you can hear that, apologies. And then having trouble in school. So if a child doesn't feel connected to their school community or they don't feel confident with their academics, that can be a risk factor. And then additionally, as Hannah was saying, when drugs are more available, we tend to see use go up. So those are some different risk factors. There are a lot of other ones out there, and we're going to try and kind of talk this through really fast. Bree, if you want to do the next slide. So this little heart is going to represent a child, and these little red triangles are going to represent risk factors, and these green boxes are going to be protective factors. So can somebody give me a risk factor? Whatever you think might be a risk factor. It doesn't have to be something I've said. All right, so I see Hannah said family history of substance use. Yeah, definitely. So I'm gonna put that. Oh, and I forgot this isn't editable. Bree, do you mind making it like, yeah, just put it over closer to the heart. Oh. Well,
you might have to escape from presenter view.
Thank you. So go, yeah, just right by the heart. And then I see somebody else said peer pressure. Absolutely. Thank you, Rochelle. Can you move one more over? Okay. So can somebody give me an example of a protective factor? It doesn't have to be one I said. It can be something that you think of or something you think you employ in your lives or your family. Absolutely. So I see Karen said talking about substance use with your child. Definitely. That's really important. Children whose parents talk to them about substance use and what parents believe is okay or is not okay regarding drug use and alcohol use, those kids are much less likely to use drugs and alcohol. And then I see Abby said good communication between parents or caregivers and children. So Bree, if you can move the green boxes like kind of on top of the red triangles. Perfect. So the purpose of talking about risk and protective factors is not to scare you, it's to show you that even if you do have risk factors in your, even if there are risk factors in a child's life, like something like even family history of substance use, those aren't things we can really control, but we don't have to despair, because when you build in those other protective factors, you can lessen the risk. So as many protective factors as you can give to children, the better it is. And I am all done. Thank you.
Oh, I think it's up to me, and we have 5 minutes. Then I know that we want to be mindful of the time. Protective factors is really a beautiful thing to think about. And I would just encourage, before I finish up here, I would encourage you to think about making a list of the protective factors that the young people or the children in your life, whether you're grandma, aunt, sister, whatever, just make a list of those protective factors. Warm bed is a protective factor, you know, someone to listen to them. Reading with a child is a protective factor, spending time. I know that when my kids were little, we had family game night. And they still, and they're, you know, they're in their mid-20s, and they still talk about how much that meant to them, is to, you know, play Old Maid or dominoes or something like that. Some of those old-fashioned things that maybe don't happen because of screen time. So we would, you know, we can certainly come back and talk about risk and protective factors in another workshop, Jen. But let's go ahead and wrap up here and take time for questions and be mindful that it's almost 7:30. These are some resources that are available for everybody, and we know that these times can be challenging, and good self-care is important. And whether you are working professionally to help people find self-care or personally to find self-care for yourself and the people that you love. So go ahead, Bree, let's take a look at the next slide. Help is available at Berry County Community Mental Health and lots of other places too. The best place to start if people are thinking about entering into a counseling or a therapeutic relationship is with their insurance carrier. Unfortunately, we wish it was, you could go anywhere you want and it was all free, but insurance really drives this bus. So if you have an insurance provider, on the back of the card, there's a number. You can call them and find out where you can go and what all the nuts and bolts are. If you don't have insurance or you have Medicaid, you can come to Berry County Mental Health, and we can help people that don't have insurance or don't have any money. And prior authorization may be required, and we've given the information there. So let's go ahead and take a look at the next slide. We've got our resources here for you, and we want to make sure we have time for any questions. I know that I need to also ask did we meet your expectations? And if you can either type in the chat box, or if you can do your little reaction like the thumbs up. If it's a if it's a thumb down, I really would invite you to email me, and my email is listed there so that I can know how we missed the mark or how we can get you the information that you need. So I see Leanne has a thumbs up. Jen, I hope we met your expectations too. And we certainly could talk to you for years and years and years and spend more time. So we hope you'll invite us back. And we hope that when we can meet with you again, that we can be with you in person. Until then, we wish you a very safe evening, and we hope that you stay well and you think about all the positive things in the kiddos' lives that you protect, because you're a protective factor just by being here. So was there any questions? Did I miss any in the chat, Emily? Yes, we do cover a lot of ground, Karen. We're kind of, some people are big shoppers and we're big talkers. We put a lot of stuff in there. We want you to get your value. So